I'm a huge advocate for the benefits of Microsoft Power Platform. I believe that it opens doors to possibilities for process streamlining that few other tools do. And I think out of the platforms that offer similar capabilities out there, it's best in class. And that's not just my opinion. Take a look at this infographic from Gartner, showing that they rank Power Platform toward the top out of its competitors. If you're thinking about starting to use Power Platform but you have no experience with it, then you might be interested in this video I published a few weeks ago outlining how you can go about learning Power Platform. But on top of your initial learning about it, there are a few things you should be cognizant of as you start to roll it out in your organization to ensure that you don't run into any pitfalls. One of the most confusing things about Power Platform for many is licensing it. And I'm not a licensing consultant. There are people and companies that dedicate themselves to this issue, but I'll break it down in broad strokes as best I can to get you started. So access to Power Platform is included with every Microsoft 365 license. And in my opinion, this is an amazing value and an amazing headline, but it's also important to dig below that headline into the finer print. Lots of Power Platform capabilities are indeed included at no additional cost in your normal Microsoft 365 license, whether that be a Business Basic or an Enterprise E5 or anything in between. And particularly if you want to interact with just Microsoft's first-party apps and services, you can achieve a great deal using this included set of capabilities. As soon as you jump outside of that set of capabilities, the cost of licensing Power Platform can increase extremely quickly. And for many organizations, particularly smaller organizations or those with lower tier Microsoft 365 licenses, this cost can quickly become equivalent to or more than the base licensing you were already using. So that's a reason to avoid using Power Platform, right? Well, not necessarily. You've got to hear me out on this. If you find content like this useful, please hit the like button down below and consider subscribing to the channel and activating the bell icon so you know the next time I release a video. If you think this information would be useful to people in your network, please consider sharing it there too. Outside of Power Platform for Microsoft 365, which is included as the complementary tier with your license, there are 3 different ways of licensing Power Apps and Power Automate. You can add per user licensing, which provides pretty much an all-you-can-eat access to Power Apps or Power Automate. You can add per app or per flow licensing, which allows you to access a single app or flow, or pay-as-you-go licensing, which is similar to the per app or per flow licensing, but is allocated in a more flexible way from your Azure subscription. These licensing arrangements mean it's really important to consider licensing at the point that you're designing your approach to building apps or flows in your organization. Say you've had a list in SharePoint that has managed your vendor's insurance records, and most of your employees access that information and use it each month. But you'd rather have this as a Power Apps app and you want to move your data from SharePoint to Dataverse. Well, without any value being necessarily added, you've just added the need to license everyone for Power Apps, as Dataverse is a premium element of the platform. So if you have 50 employees who've been accessing this data, you immediately jump from something that costs $0 extra each month to potentially $3,000 a year. The value in Power Platform really isn't in building and licensing a single killer app. I mean, it can be, but more often it's about, as fully as possible, adopting the intent of the platform. With poor planning or adoption, it's really easy to have a situation where Power Platform feels really expensive, even at $5 per user per month for a single app. But equally, with a focus on adoption and the resultant agility, it can feel really good value to be paying $20 per user per month for an all-you-can-eat access. In most cases, when you decide to jump into Power Platform, you need to plan to really jump into Power Platform. Get started with the free access, discover the value and the flexibility it can offer across your work, and then add on additional features, licenses, or consumption elements like AI Builder. Dig into Microsoft's guidance on adoption and management, and make your Power Platform journey as much about your people and how they approach work as the technology itself. Power Platform can be transformational, but you need to approach it with the right way of thinking and an open mind. There are now, I think, more than 1,000 connectors for Power Platform, both connecting to Microsoft's first-party apps and services and to third parties, with a good number being basic connectors or accessible without additional licensing, but a lot being premium connectors that you need dedicated Power Platform licensing for. It's really critical that you dig into the detail of what connectors can actually do, rather than just expecting that everything that you can do as a user in whichever app you're using the connector for will be a capability of that connector. Almost universally, this isn't the case, and more often than not, I find newer Power Platform users struggling because their connectors simply lack capabilities that are core to their intended app logic, and they only work out the limitations once they are some way through the process of trying to build out a solution. I've expressed on this channel before that I think Microsoft itself really needs a shot in the arm on its connector development for its first-party apps and services. Even services that are an entry point to Power Platform development for new users, like forms or bookings, frustratingly continue to lack basic capabilities that are perfectly possible using the Graph API, but not the out-of-the-box Microsoft published connector. If services have robust APIs, then there are often ways around connector limitations, but these routes, particularly when it comes to using Microsoft's own services, often push apps or flows from basic tiers to premium tiers. Custom connectors are always premium tier, even if you just need to build one to do only one thing. So if the capability you want in a Microsoft app like Shifts, for example, isn't present in the published connector and isn't accessible as a graph endpoint from any of the basic tier HTTP request to graph actions, then your app or flow just became a lot more expensive than you were expecting. For many new users, it's also the case that it isn't immediately clear that Power Platform doesn't give you any inherent capability to change the end user experience of whatever app it is you're trying to extend. This is where you start to hit a hard line between low-code opportunities and the need for pro-code custom app development. Take bookings, for example. Is it possible to apply certain checks or rules automatically to bookings end users create using Power Automate? Well, of course it is. But then a slightly different requirement of applying these checks or rules as part of the booking process before the booking is accepted is simply impossible. Would it be possible to build a completely custom front end for Microsoft Bookings that presents a similar interface but applies a different set of logical checks before a booking is accepted, leveraging graph requests in the background? Well, certainly. But is this something that's within the capabilities of someone using Power Apps or Power Automate? Certainly not. Subtle differences in what you are trying to accomplish can radically alter the suitability of Power Platform's existing connectors or even the Power Platform tools themselves to achieve your desired outcome. It's important to not discover this only when you are some way into building whatever it is you have planned. So having this visibility from the outset is critical for all users. Getting started with Power Platform, particularly with the addition of tools like AI-based natural language to flows or Excel spreadsheets to apps, is really straightforward. And individual users or small teams can add a huge amount of value using some of the basic functions in Power Platform to get more done more efficiently. While this approach is technically scalable, it's not advisable to grow beyond a small team setting without putting in place some more robustness when it comes to managing your Power Platform assets. The first thing to be concerned about is where does data reside and who owns your apps or flows. Both of these issues can become critical when you have staff turnover in your business, and in the case, for example, of data being present in a user's OneDrive, can break the apps or flow you're relying on. Secondly, unless you have set up an approach to application lifecycle management that allows you to develop and test away from production, the default experience will be that your users are editing live in-use apps or flows. If that flow is relied upon by two people, then that could be frustrating, but is probably no big deal if something goes wrong. But if it's relied upon by 100 people, then it quickly becomes a bigger deal and could shut down aspects of your operation. Reviewing the detail of application lifecycle management approaches is well beyond the scope of this video, but it's something you must get on top of if your use of Power Platform is going to touch critical processes for many users. You don't want to wait until something important breaks or some data gets incorrectly used before you put in place the right controls, training, and tools to ensure you are doing this properly in your organization. Also remember that all apps will require maintenance over time. Occasionally, features of systems you depend on may be changed or deprecated. Recently, I published this video about a change Microsoft had made to its Forms product, which is a great new feature, but also has the possibility of somewhat breaking any Power Automate flows that connect to Forms using this new capability. This stuff happens as different tools develop in different directions at different rates, and for this reason it's essential you know what is in use, what it relies upon, and how it was built, so you can fix it if and when it breaks. Additionally, it's critical that you adopt practices that build the ability to know when things have broken or somewhat gone wrong into your design. Power Automate will alert a flow owner after some amount of time that a flow has been broken and been turned off. And if it's just something you're relying on yourself, then not too much is likely to break because of this. But the bigger you get, the bigger the impact of downtime, and the more complex it might be to catch up on the data that was missed while things were broken. And certainly with some connectors, it's almost impossible to catch up on what was missed while things were broken, so you have to look out for that. The world of Power Platform can open doors to reimagining how your business works in a way that's unparalleled by any other solution on the market if you have an existing Microsoft 365 deployment. And while users here or there using Power Platform is kind of just to be expected, if you want to go further than that, if you want to reap its benefits across your organization, then some initial planning and thought up front is going to be your friend. With anything, no matter how beneficial it can be, having full visibility of what you're getting into from the outset can help you achieve a better outcome. This is definitely the case with Power Platform. Thinking about user adoption, training, deployment help like the Center of Excellence Toolkit, and other resources can help to ease the way towards success without any gotcha moments along the way. I hope this has been useful to open your eyes to some of the things you should be thinking about. Did I miss any big ticket items you think should have been included? Let me know down in the comments. As always, links to the pertinent resources for this video are down below. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye bye.